welcome to this edition of Off the Front Porch, the weekly podcast exploring the Southern experience. My name is Tony Ballman, and thank you for joining me as we traverse the highways and back roads of the American South and chat with some of the region's most colorful personalities and tell some of its most fascinating stories. Today's travels bring us to Snelling, South Carolina, a tiny crossroads in Barnwell County, to Duncannon Plantation. Built in 1835, this majestic home and the land surrounding it have their own stories to tell, and we will explore them later this season. Among them, Duncannon Plantation used to be the home of George Herbert Walker, the grandfather of President George Herbert Walker Bush and great-grandfather of President George W. Bush. As a child, the elder President Bush would visit this home, his grandfather here. There's a story about a hole in the floor that we will definitely tell when we spotlight this place. Today, Duncannon Plantation is a popular destination for special events, especially weddings. And for this edition of Off the Front Porch, we visit for just such a special event. Not a wedding, but to revisit the ever-evolving story of agriculture in South Carolina. Today, at a political fundraising event, we sit for a conversation with an upstate farming family who work hard every day to keep the home fires burning on their farms near Clemson. Now, one of these farmers just happens to be a legend in Palmetto State sports history. In the fall of 1981, he led the Clemson University Tigers football team to a perfect 12-0 record and the national championship with a 22-15 victory over Nebraska in the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day, 1982. My other guest is his son, also a farmer, following the family tradition and now trying to make an impact of his own, running for State Commissioner of Agriculture here in South Carolina. My guest, legendary Clemson coach Danny Ford, and his son, Danny Lee Ford II. Thank you both for joining me here today. I genuinely appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Well, let's talk a little bit, first of all, about the reason we're here. You have decided to offer up for the position of Commissioner of Agriculture here in the state of South Carolina. Why? What was it about the current state of agriculture in South Carolina that said you wanted to come off the farm and get up to the State House?
Oh, it's behind the times. We've been going the wrong direction for too long, and farmers are really struggling. My 1- and 4-year-old now that I have, my 4-year-old looked at me and told me he wants to be a farmer, and the suicide rate in farmers right now is 3.5 times the national average. So it's just my time to make an impact for the next generation and really see that we can give them a level playing field to be able to produce for the state of South Carolina. Right now it's really not like that. We bring our cows in, we bring our chickens in, and we ship them right back out of state to processing elsewhere. So we really want to make a move to bridge local, support the community, and bring all that tax revenue back to South Carolina instead of having it go out of state.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is it in your background that you feel positions you to be the type of leader to lead agriculture deeper into, the third decade of the 21st century?
I've always been heavy in agriculture. I grew up rodeoing, grew up at a vet's place for about 15 years, and I've asked my dad and all these guys for many years why you couldn't do something a certain way, and it was always regulation or something that held you back from doing it. So I've really just had a good path into seeing all the problems and knowing what I want to do about that to really bring us together as a state. Right now we're bringing in 68% of our food from another country. So, we really need to make a push, especially the way the world's going in the United States, to be self-sufficient in South Carolina and really leave our children something that we can be proud of. It's our responsibility to do that. We shouldn't just be here to use it up, get what's happening right now, and then leave them with the mess. And I feel like that's what we're doing right now. So big push to give them a level playing field and give them what they need to produce. Right now, average age of a farmer is 60. 35 and under is only 9%. So we're not doing a good job recruiting these kids to be farmers and letting them know where their food comes from and what they need to do to self-sustain themselves.
Well, and our outgoing Commissioner of Agriculture, Hugh Weathers, has been in that spot for quite a long number of years. As a younger man, do you feel like that you will have more of a rapport with those young farmers that that are sitting there maybe on the bubble. It's like, well, there's so many opportunities out here. Why would I want to put in the sweat, the labor, the time to be on a farm?
Well, there's when I grew up rodeoing, and I high school rodeoed and got to an age that I wanted to go compete collegiate rodeo, and there's not an option for that in South Carolina. So that's, like I say, just coming all the way up through the ranks, I've seen the problems and where we're losing our farmers. So, I want to take a big push and to give them a reason to stay in South Carolina. I want to bring other young farmers to South Carolina. Right now, I think South Carolina is probably one of the hardest places to produce for consumers. And so I'd really like when people look at our state throughout the country to say they've really got something going on over there and we want to be a part of it.
What are the stopgaps to producing? What are the things that are obstacles to being a more robust producer of agriculture?
Oh, there's all kinds. I mean, even if you just look at what's happened with Monsanto's and different things. I mean, there were tons of seed producers in South Carolina at one time, and now there's hardly any. And that's because either way, you're going to have to pay Monsanto's for the cross-pollination. So, why are those other companies going to produce corn if in the end those farmers have to pay Monsanto's? All that money just turned around and went to them. It's the same with the big four packers in the chicken industry and the beef industry. So, they can sell single cuts. They can sell USDA grade prime beef. We can't. We're held to a different standard, and we have to sell it halves, wholes, different things, and that's harder on our farmers. People don't have a freezer or the money to go buy a whole cow or half a cow. They don't care to own a cow. They want the beef product from it. So we need to bring that along with the labeling. Hear a lot of stuff about the labeling, packaging that are struggles. It's if you bring it from out of the country or out of state, our South Carolina Department of Agriculture doesn't regulate those labels. So it's only our farmers in South Carolina that are taking the hit. So we really have to back them and give them what they need to produce. One thing that I really feel passionate about is they have an app that does every roadside stand and market. And I would love for that to be able to list a live inventory of what these farmers have available, and as well consumers list wants. Our farmers speculate every day. Every day they go out there and figure out what people want. It would give them a huge leg up if they knew what the community expected from them. Used to in the 1980s, it wasn't like that. Farmers just wanted to produce commodities and be left alone, and we're out of that industry. It's changed so much, and people want to go back to local, but there's just so much red tape out there that it's a hard time to do that. So, I think having a South Carolina distribution center would be huge. We can offer these services up for our farmers because it's food security. It don't necessarily have to make a ton of money off of it to link the consumers and the farmers in the state of South Carolina. So I'd really like to see stuff like that done and just give the farmer a leg up to where it's easier for them to produce for the consumer instead of these big corporations.
You speak with such authority about these things that are very complex issues in agriculture. Is it because you live it every day, or have you just done a whole lot of homework going into being a candidate for the Commission of Agriculture?
No, I'm a local farmer, so these are all competitors of mine.
Yeah.
If you're not getting rid of what you need, then you got to look at why, and then you look at your competition. And so I've studied my competition. I've seen that they've lobbied. I've seen that they put some of the most money into the government out there. So, yeah, I really know the problems. And like I say, unless you were in my body and grew up in the ranks, you wouldn't know exactly why I was qualified for this. But, I mean, I can give you certain instances. This is my dad. He's extremely competitive. I'm extremely competitive. Grew up as a vet that was a mentor to me that, made me work at everything the hardest way possible to learn. And so, just all these things and, me looking at them one day and saying, hey, why can't we sell USDA prime beef cuts to consumers? Well, there's red tape around that. So this is how I learned a lot about this stuff. And it's not new. It's old. Monsanto's has been around for a long time, Bayer, all these different companies. So we're just now seeing the harsh effects that they have on our industry.
You read my mind because you actually said it. You segued into my next question. How much of being the son of a legendary football coach, youngest coach ever to win the national championship, and just got in there, was just tenacious as all get out. How much of that just informs your ability to get in there and just be a fighter in a race against, we'll call it, the political establishment?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wondered where my place was, and so, you know, you think of it as a struggler, you got a harder time than other people, and then when you grow up and you see a path and you see that all that was for something, then it really gives you that motivation, you know. And, you know, Dad liked to help young kids and liked to give them a better life, and that's what I like to do too. You know, I helped with Helene and Pilot, and I flew up there a bunch, took a lot of different stuff to a lot of people, and that motivation that you get from helping those people is something that is newly discovered for me, because I was on the farm and didn't have that option. So, you know, it's just a newfound service that I feel like that I want to pursue, because I know how successful I can be when those people are counting on me. You know, there is no wall too big that I can't jump if I'm helping other people in a bad situation.
Coach, let me bring you into the conversation here if I can. Talk to me a little bit about your history in farming. I mean, everybody knows you as Coach Danny Ford, and you know, you've probably lost count of the number of times that the word legend has been put in front of your name. But give me a little bit of background on your life in farming and how it informed the way that you brought up Danny Lee.
Well, being raised in Alabama, you know, back when I was raised, nobody locked their doors. Everybody had a garden. We walked to school. We did all the things the old people said they used to do, and now I'm an old person, and I can say we used to do that. But we had a little old place in the backyard, in the holler down there. We had a well down there, and we always had a cow around the house. We had some chickens. My uncle lived next door, and he always had rabbits. And we raised a few pigs, not many pigs. I mean, you know, we were more living in the city-county that we didn't have the regulations then that you couldn't have a cow in the city. You know?
Yeah.
But we were in the city, but we owned a little bit of land, not much, an acre and a half probably. And so we had the backyard for animals, but that was what we ate. My father was a mill worker. We lived in a 2-bedroom house and with four children, so you can imagine the sleeping arrangement.
Yeah.
So, like a lot of people in South Carolina, so we learned how to do that. But every Sunday we would get up, and our Sunday day in Alabama, you would get up and shine your shoes, and you would get ready for church. You'd go to church. Your mother would cook a chicken or a roast, and you come home and eat, and then the mom and daddy'd lay down and take a nap, and you would sit there and try to find something to do. And then after about 3 o'clock, they'd get up, and my uncle had a farm in the lower part of the county, and we'd ride down there and look at the animals and visit. And my uncle let us keep a cow or two down there, and got interested in cattle that way. And then we'd go get a milkshake or a chocolate derby, ice cream dipped in chocolate, you know. And then we would come back home and we'd watch the Auburn football show for an hour. Then we'd watch Coach Bryant's Alabama show for an hour, and then we would go and watch Lassie, and that was every Sunday. That's awesome. That was our Sunday routine. And so, you know, when I got ready to get out of coaching, or when I was in coaching, I always wanted land.
Yeah.
You know, and that was part of my contract at Clemson was the farm that we live on now, and that my son also lives on. And
so you were existing on the edge of farming. You grew up in a rural environment, but you were not somebody who necessarily had the farm in your blood. So it came to you after you enjoyed the success at Clemson.
Well, when my daddy always fooled the cows in some kind of cow, you know.
Yeah.
And we always killed a beef, and we always killed pigs, and had that. And But no, we didn't even own a tractor. So I knew very little about farming as far as how to farm, or know very little about row cropping now. Know a good bit about cattle because I've experienced it, but
right.
he knows a lot more about both of them than I do. But the part that I love about farming is the springtime and fall time, when the newborn calves are out running around and you see life, and in the spring you start planting a garden and you see growth, and
right.
you're able to live off the land if you prepare the land correctly and keep the weeds out of it and of the garden and everything. But that's what I enjoy, and I enjoy the work at my age now of just going out and staying busy. And not that I get a lot accomplished, but at least I'm not sitting in the house watching TV waiting to die. I don't want to do that. I know I'm going to die at one time, but and I look forward to that, I'm sure. But I don't want to just sit there and wait on it. I want to contribute. I can't coach football anymore. I'm too old to coach football. I think I can still help people in different ways. I think I can. If it's just helping the cows or helping anything, but just staying busy and being around people that like to not sit around, try to accomplish something every day. That's what my wife asked me the day before yesterday. She said, how did your day go? And I said, not good. I said, I didn't get anything accomplished today. And she said, was that what your life depends on? I said, a lot of it does. I mean, I judge my daily work on what I get accomplished, and not a whole lot, but try to get as much done as I can.
Coach, that is powerful stuff, because, for a guy who was in the limelight, you were at the pinnacle of sport. You were the coach of a national championship team. You were on national television. You had 80,000 fans cheering you. How difficult was it for you to settle into the life of a gentleman farmer?
Oh, easy. You could get burnt out on that just like anything else, And I was very fortunate. I started coaching as a head coach at 31 years old.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you have to be in your 40s or 50s to get a head coaching job. And there's only so many out there. Very few people are lucky enough to be a head football coach in this country. And it's going to get worse, because I think with NIL and everything, the way football's leaning today, we're going to lose some colleges playing football before it's over with. So,
being a guy who was in there at the time when, in my opinion, sports was purest, we could do a whole nother show on your opinions on the NIL.
It's different, and it's something that I don't even enjoy watching pro ball anymore. I mean, because it's just it doesn't click on me like it used to. So it was easy for me to walk away. I had seen all the people I wanted to see. I'd ate all the steaks I wanted to eat, and I'd been to all the places I wanted to be. I just wanted to kind of go out and be and try to live off the land a little bit, try to watch animals grow, try to be close enough to see people if I wanted to see them. If I didn't want to see people, didn't have to.
Got it. Did you bring anything, in terms of like the stuff that informed your life as a coach? Did you bring anything from that former life into the life of being a gentleman farmer?
Oh, I think it correlates a lot, football and life. And any kind, it doesn't have to be farming. It could be a mill worker. It could be a car salesman. It could be a post office worker. It could be anybody that's trying to be successful in life, because it all correlates to the same thing. To play football, it takes training. It takes hard work. You don't get an education until you start getting out in the real world and this kind of thing. That's part of his deal here of wanting to be the commissioner of ag. He can only do so much, but he can influence a lot of things. But the state legislative people are going to pass the laws. But he has got a lot of things under the commissioner of agriculture, weights and measurements, fuel, now the restaurants and the crops and the insurance, a lot of different things that he will have to learn to do, but he's capable of doing it. So and that to me is the same thing with any other deal. If you're a car salesman, just like if you're a football coach. If you don't win games, you're not going to be there. If you don't sell cars, you're not going to be there. It's not a whole lot of difference, but there's a lot of similarities of how football. Coach Bryant used to tell us, football prepares you for life, and I believe that's very strongly. And life is farming, everyday life, working for a living, having children, all the things that you're supposed to do to be successful in life.
Danny Ford carries a whole lot of celebrity around the state of South Carolina. How hard is it for him to get you to get in the car and drive down to Snelling, South Carolina, or anywhere else to go out and stand beside him and lend the name of Danny Ford to Danny Lee Ford II?
Well, I can tell you, we're oil and water. We don't like each other a lot sometimes. I mean, and it's, I guess it's because I was never around enough. I was always trying to help somebody else's child. I should have been there more for him and my other 3 children. But I thought football was so important. I had to spend so many hours at work, and if I didn't, somebody's out working me and all this kind of thing. But it supplied us with a good life too, so we can't complain about that.
Do you get enough? Do you get enough steaks and sweet tea around when you're on the stump?
Oh yeah. But we have a lot, and I'm gonna turn it back over to him.
All right, got plenty of prime rib out there. So Danny.
So, one thing to touch on in that is not a lot of people understand the good with the bad of everything. As humans, we look at stuff just as the good. They'll see me if I get this position, they'll think, "Oh, Lee's lucky," and it's the same for football.
Right.
It's a struggle when it's hard, and when it's good, but it's never the same. And so I've looked at it, and it is whatever day that it is. It's easier or harder to get him to go, but he's been very willing. It's been fun for us to get out and see some of these old people that we hadn't seen in a long time. Shoot, since I was a kid. I mean, Cliff Ellis, a bunch of these different guys that, it's been a long time since I'm seeing. I'm sure Dad talks to him and sees them all the time, but it's great to catch up with Clyde Wren and all these people that we haven't seen in a long time that used to be a big part of that life.
You talked about your dad talked about oil and water, but I mean the reality is I want to ask you how much of what a Coach Ford poured into your life as a young man is really informing and motivating what you're doing out here, because politics is a hard business. I mean I don't know which is harder, sports or politics.
Well,
or farming.
Yeah, good news is. I grew up in the Ford family. I have 3 sisters, and so we're all extremely competitive. Dad says we're oil and water. I think we're water and water.
Okay.
And that's just it. He sees me coming up exactly like he did, and it's hard for him to sit there and see how I could improve on things, and it's hard for me to sit there and think that he knows everything that I feel like I know. So it's one of those things that people just look at and they say, "Oh, you've got it made." I tell his players they spent 4 years with him. I spent 40. I mean, he's taught me everything that I know. As well as some mentors. But there's no doubt of the football lifestyle. All we're doing right now is the same thing we did football. It was go, 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 go. And rodeo and growing up was the same way. It was preparing and that's what we're doing now. So a lot of the stuff does align, and I appreciate that upbringing because I believe that's what really qualifies me to do this job.
And you mentioned it. You've seen the tough side as well as the good side of farming. I mean, I can only imagine that getting out there working every day on the farm has got to be incredibly satisfying. But I was reading something like in the last year, you got gut punched by some issues with some parasites or something in the.
Yeah, so when we had Helene, it was the biggest environmental disaster that South Carolina's ever had, and nobody's paying attention to it. I mean, we had a ton of silt washed off that mountain into our waterways. And if you look right now, Lake Greenwood's dealing with a big fish kill over there. We had our bloom in the pond in
it was
May.
Algae bloom.
Yeah, it was algae bloom, cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, microcystis, but they are – not really paying attention to it. The Department of Environmental stays real busy on all the public waterways. There's 1 million man-made ponds in South Carolina that it's the farmer's responsibility to cover. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not very educated on water. When my cows started dying, I sure got educated very quickly. And it's just one of those things that you look at that you think it's water. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be fine. And it's not. It's a direct reflection of how we treat it. And, that blue-green algae is not something that we haven't dealt with. That it's responsible. There was an event that developed our atmosphere and the oxygen out there. So, it's something that is extremely toxic for a small amount of time, and we have not educated on ourselves because of the way it is. I tell them it's a lot like a mushroom. There's a lot of mushrooms out there that can really help you and are beneficial, lion's mane, and then there's some that you go out in a horse pasture and kill you, so we don't know a whole lot about it, and we need to give these farmers what they need to be able to deal with these problems. There's a testing, ELISA testing that would be a great thing for our state to adopt, to be able to test this water for farmers and learn about this stuff. But, first you've got to educate the farmer about when you need to test, and then, you've got to test it. So that's where we are right now. And I do know a couple people in the state that are really working hard to bring that testing because they see it coming.
In reality, your running for Commissioner of Agriculture in South Carolina is very much a David and Goliath competition. Yeah. I mean, if we're speaking plainly about that, because, we talked before, there's a bit of an old guard that exists in South Carolina. And so a young man coming in with fresh ideas, new ideas, albeit one that has the dirt under your fingernails to prove that you were a farmer as opposed to perhaps some other people. What are you going to do if you actually win this thing? And, how are you going to balance farm life with being Commissioner of Agriculture?
Oh, I'd have to drop the farm. I couldn't participate in that anymore. I'd have new responsibilities that I'd have to take care of. I'd have to move to Columbia and get an apartment there. But, I'm ready to jump in and get fighting because I know exactly what our farmers need to be successful. And, just like I told you, there's so much red tape there. And, we had a conversation at the debate last night, and one of the people running said, it cost hundreds of millions of dollars to get processing plants in South Carolina. That's true, but not for mobile processors. There's different ways to go about this thing and to give these farmers what they need. And, that's the good thing. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in Arkansas, trained horses professionally in Florida. So I know how a lot of other people do it, and they do it differently than us.
It sounds like you bring a very fresh and new and wide open way of looking at agriculture in South Carolina, which is the state's largest industry.
Yeah.
And so one last thing, and then I'll let you guys go because I know you guys got prime rib rating and people to shake hands with. So I'll just ask a couple of questions. First of all, agriculture is an international. It is an international business. Yeah. You're competing against providers and producers from overseas or whatever. Do you feel that you have internationally or enough command of international commerce and commodities where you could do the job on that level?
Appreciate you bringing that up because that's what I want to get away from. I want the community cohesion. I want our farmers to be supported by the community and our farmers to produce for the community. A lot like when they had cotton and textile mills in South Carolina. Those cotton producers produced for the textile mills, and then they made the cotton in there. So the people needed the farmers. All that sense has gone out of this state. And so what I want to do is I want to rein it in. So you're exactly right. As a commissioner of agriculture, how much can I go in there and be effective if there's an international problem? Not very much. Well, even nationally, how much can I be effective? Not very much. But if we're producing it right here in South Carolina and we're all huddled around our farmers and producing for our community, then I can be a huge help. And it doesn't matter who president is. It doesn't matter what's happening in China. It doesn't matter what's happening in Argentina. It only matters what's happening in South Carolina. Now, we have a long way to go to be able to be self-sufficient. But it's a 10-year plan. Nobody's looking 10 years down the road. Right now we have solar panels, solar farms that are coming in, 12,000 acres zoned in Kings Tree down there. Then we have the 79% growth in South Carolina. The residential development is absolutely coming in like we've never seen it.
And you have the Chinese buying up all kinds of farmland, and when does that stop?
Well, see, and that's what a lot of people are worried about that. But a lot of people don't understand that the largest international landowner in South Carolina is the Netherlands and IKEA, because they are putting up these solar farms. So these solar farms are good for about 10 years, and then you'll never farm on them again. The acids that they clean the solar panels with, everything else, and the data centers. I mean, I was just up there talking at our local county council meeting about how they want to give Duke a Phylos to be able to get a tax break. Well, they're charging our farmers peak rate all the time. Whenever they can't go in there and turn it off at the cotton gins or the chicken houses or all this stuff. So they're giving a tax break to corporations that are making billions of dollars while they are charging farmers, and they can barely make it. What's happened in our agriculture society is that these people have figured out how to give us a small amount of profit, and we take that and we up the acreage. Well, as soon as it becomes non-profitable, you just lose more. And right now we're in a non-profitable state. You have the diesel prices, you have the fertilizer prices, you have all these things, and it usually only takes one to end a farm. Yeah, the inputs.
It sounds like you have some very sizable genies to try to put back in the bottle, because what your ideas are ambitious. It's like, keep it simple.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it simple.
And depend on the ones we know.
But to put that genie back in the bottle, it seems like a formidable task.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Farmers are not great marketers. They're great producers. So as the government, as the South Carolina government, we have to help them with that, and we have to put these things in place. I mean, right now we're driving right past some of the best food in South Carolina to get to the grocery store. Most of that is processed frozen food. So what better way to do it than to give these farmers the distribution, the app, the different things to where those people can, the schools. There's 18 dairies in the state right now. Why are these dairies not producing for our schools? That's a no-brainer in my mind. You know what I'm saying? We have watched a middleman come in and kill our dairy farmers. I mean, Anderson used to have 200-300 dairies, and now there's 18 in the state. There used to be huge. I've talked to all these guys about it. So, the other thing that we're really battling is we're 100 million cows under what we were in the 1970s, and we're increasing population. So that's nationally. That's
but still, the industry is suffering.
It's suffering, and we have to. The farmers are selling these cows right now because they are worth a lot of money. So how do we do that? Well, we go in there and we try to give them tax advantages to be able to hold on to their heifers and increase these numbers and not sell them.
Danny Lee Ford, the second candidate for South Carolina Commission of Agriculture. Thank you for sitting down. I have learned so much that I didn't know about some of the areas where it looks like you're willing to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Oh, I'm willing to shake things up, and I'm not just talking. I mean, if I get in there, we're going to get to work, and that's one of the things that my dad has definitely instilled in me is hard work. There's nobody going to go in that office that's going to work any harder than me. And for me, it's not an 8-to-5 government job. It's what I've been doing all my life, and I will be mashing around the clock to get these farmers what they need to be able to produce for their community.
All right. Well, thank you for taking time out of it. Coach, I got to ask you one more thing real quick. Okay. All right. You got that first national championship for Clemson. How often does Dabo call you and get advice from Coach Ford?
Yeah. No, Dabo's doing just fine without my advice. He's got 2 of them, so he's way ahead of me. But he's done a good job. He's on a little bit of like a farmer right now. He's got to have some rain, and he's got to nurture his crop, and he's got to plant some good seeds, and his reward will come every Saturday or his defeat will come every Saturday, and unfortunately that's the way he's judged. Not what all he does for the state, for the children,
for the kids, for the way that he sets the bar,
and what his beliefs are, and he's as good as anybody in the world at doing that. And but unfortunately, he's a football coach, and he's got to win, because that's the way all of them. That's not just at Clemson. That's at Alabama. That's at South Carolina. That's at the Citadel. That's any place. Newberry had the best probably. No, I take that back. I excuse me, you PC Presbyterian people. Presbyterian probably had the best football team in the state this past year, because they had the best record, and the young man that's coaching up there did a heck of a job. But that's the way they judge. Every one of them that plays football, everybody's in a competitive situation is judged by if you win or lose.
Well, I got to tell you what, and it's interesting. We're going to leave it right there, because we're sitting in a situation where the guy sitting over here on your left is going to be judged in a lot of ways by whether he wins or loses.
Well, yeah.
And
he's got to win first, and that's where we would appreciate everybody that listens to this and sees this to support him. And that's the other thing. There's not enough farmers in the state to elect the commissioner of agriculture. They won't even get to first base, in a home run derby deal. You got to have the community. You got to have the people of South Carolina. You got to have every person go out and vote on June the 9th. And vote for who you want to, but vote. That's the most important thing. That's a God-given thing that all the Americans have fought for all their lives, and the veterans and everybody else. So we appreciate everybody. We hope they go out and vote. We hope they choose him, but if not, at least vote.
Coach Danny Ford, the coach of the national championship team back in 1980, 81 season, won it on New Year's Day on 1982, and Danny Lee Ford, a candidate for Commissioner of Agriculture. Thank you for both sitting with me here today. I genuinely appreciate it, and I do wish you the best of luck in the primary. And Coach, it is absolutely a privilege to see you again after about 30 years.
And I want to say one more time about what he said. I think it's like 11% of registered voters voting in the primary. So it's something that everybody really needs to educate everybody on and get involved, because in South Carolina, that's where it's won and lost.
That's right. It really is. Well, thank you all for listening to this edition of Off the Front Porch. I hope you'll follow us on Facebook, and you'll also look at our Instagram page. Check out the video of this on our YouTube channel. And join us again next week as we hit the highways and the byways of South Carolina to tell more stories. Not on the front porch, off the front porch.